Calisthenics is the #1 discipline when it comes to full body control and mastery and moving your body throughout space and time. Doesn't matter how heavy you lift, how good your bench press is, or how peak your biceps is, at some point you will have to work through calisthenics exercises if you truly want to become athletic, instead of just big but barely able to scratch your back or wipe your ass. So today we'll go through some of the most potent calisthenics exercises and how you can use those to achieve full body mastery. So if you're ready, let's go and have some fun. Now, before we dive deeper into the mass building exercises, we have some exercises that focus a lot more on control, full body tension, while adding flexibility and still a big chunk of strength. With one of the most potent exercises in this category being the classic reverse Nordic curl, not only because it builds a lot of strength in our entire anterior chain, a lot of control throughout our entire anterior chain, pretty much stretching every single muscle fiber, working through our quads, our hip flexors, our lower abdominals, our upper abdominals, and even opening up our chest and shoulders the tiniest bit and strengthening all of those once we start moving forward, which means that they are an amazing exercise to help you start working on more control and flexibility. The amount of strength that you will be building with a complete reverse Nordic curl and the amount of body control you can muster through this is absolutely insane. I would, however, just recommend starting out with a very short movement, pushing your hips forward, lengthening your anterior chain first before you start bending backwards. And once you have more safety and more control in this movement, start increasing your range of motion, just like you would with any other exercise. We're using progressive overload through increased range of motion instead of increased resistance. Over time, you should be able to move backwards further and further and further until your head touches the floor behind you and reverse the entire movement without having any sort of pain either in your joints or in your tendons. This exercise also helps us work on some of the most injury-prone regions in our body, strengthening them, being our ankles, our knees, and our hips. Not only through lengthening them, just like we're lengthening our tibialis now and going into full ankle extension and strengthening them once we start moving forward by flexing our anterior chain, but also by putting pressure on them and helping us develop the necessary strength and control to move those joints through different ranges of motion and in different movement patterns. Interestingly enough, another exercise on this list is the exact opposite, the Nordic curl, because this one, instead of focusing on strengthening our anterior chain, we'll start focusing on strengthening our posterior chain. More specifically, we've got the top insertions of our calves, our entire biceps femoris, as well as our glutes. Once again, combining a massive amount of full body control and tension to start moving forward closer and closer to the floor until you start losing engagement from those muscles before you reverse this exercise with as much control as you have. Another exercise that you should start with the minimum range of motion before you start increasing that, because not only does it require a lot of strength and control, but it also can lead to a lot of cramping, which is very common with people who do Nordic curls. So if your range of motion ends here and you start losing control over the movement here, do not worry about it. Just go through this very short movement and over time increase it just by 1 inch and then another inch and then another inch until you lose control again and reverse. This being probably the most potent hamstring exercise that you can do with your own body weight, that also feeds into glute strength and calf strength while helping us build better full body control and tension. Not to mention that being able to do a full Nordic curl is super fucking impressive and a testament to some absurd strength and absurd body mastery. With this one also adding to the same exact benefit we had for our ankles, knees, and hips, being that #1, we're putting pressure on them, we are lengthening them, and we are combining that lengthening, that strengthening, and that pressure with different movement patterns and, once again, different ranges of motion. Which is the whole point of mobility, being able to move a joint in a controlled fashion through ever increasing ranges of motion without being hindered by your own body's abilities or lack thereof. Now, another exercise on our most potent list is one that nobody will be surprised by, and that is the classic dip exercise. Now, there are an absurd amount of variations when it comes to dips. We are now working more on the arm dominant exercise, where we are closing up our arms, going into external shoulder rotation, meaning this movement locking out and then keeping our arms as close to our upper body as possible while staying as upright as possible, putting the most amount of pressure on our triceps. This will help with some amazing arm development, and once you start combining that with the more chest dominant variation, which is a bit easier to do once you have a wider grip, opening your arms sideways and leaning the tiniest bit forward to lengthen our chest as much as we can, get an amazing anterior delt and pectoral stretch before we reverse this movement once again in a controlled fashion. One mistake that I see very often, and it cuts off about 20 to 40% of your gains, which is ending your dip movement here instead of here, lengthening our shoulders and closing up our chest, moving our arms inwards to have as much chest engagement as we possibly can. With the cool thing about the dip being, once you get a little bit more comfortable in the movement, you can start having a little bit more fun with it. So instead of ending your movement here, you can put down your arms, reverse this, and then extend your arms once again, adding a lot more shoulder, chest, and arm engagement in general, being either with classic knee raises at the top of the movement, or leg raises at the top of the movement, or even adding some nice oblique work by moving sideways into lateral spinal flexion until we have all of those muscle fibers involved into this single exercise. And since a well-executed dip does require a lot of strength, you can work with some assistance, be it your feet on the floor to help you lower down and catch some of your body weight, or as much body weight as you need to go through a full range of motion, or using a classic dip machine to help you until you have the necessary strength to go through the entire thing all by yourself. Moving us back to the more leg dominant exercises, don't worry, we only have one more of those. We have the creme de la creme, probably the most coveted leg exercise when it comes to calisthenics, and that is of course the classic pistol squat. Not only because it uses a lot of body control, a lot of body strength, and can help you build massive legs, but also because it requires a lot of flexibility, especially in our posterior chain, and we've talked about this a lot on this channel, a lot of hip flexor strength and core strength, two of the things most people definitely need to work on, not only for stabilization, but also to reduce hip injuries. And it is indeed an exercise that can help you become far more athletic and build some body tension and body control that is very hard to get from almost any other calisthenics exercise. And since the pistol squat does have a lot of moving parts and is a little bit more complex than the last couple of exercises, you can check out this video if you want to go through it step by step. But if you want to learn this the quick way, the two things that will make this so much more easy for you to learn is this, and I don't mean being literate because I hope you are, this can be used to elevate your heel. And what elevating your heel does is making it far less flexibility and mobility dominant and far more strength dominant, because you do not need all this mobility in your ankles, knees, and hips to lower down all the way and to reverse the movement. And if you lack all the strength and mobility and control in general, you can sit down like so and start moving from this position, basically going through a tiny fraction of the range of motion and starting to work on the coordination required for this movement and the necessary strength, reducing that elevation for a longer range of motion, reducing it again for a longer range of motion, and over time you will be able to sit down completely on the floor, elevate your butt, raise up and go through the full range of motion, and you will be part of the fraction of a fraction of a fraction of people that go to the gym that can actually perform a fully controlled pistol squat. And then of course the exercise that all of you expected to be on this list is the classic pull-up, but since the pull-up once again has a lot of moving parts and there is a lot that you can do wrong and there is a lot that goes into learning the first pull-up, you can check out this guide where we go through it step by step, how to master complete pulling form, not just the classic one. But here is a rapid-fire progression when it comes to both difficulty as well as muscle control and strength building properties, with the easiest one being an underhand biceps dominant, chin up, of course going through the full range of motion and into complete extension both in our arms and our shoulders. Latissimus dominant overhand grip pull up, which will help you build massive lats, define your back, and combine it with a lot of arm strength as well. The archer pull-up, which requires even more strength since it is more of a unilateral movement pattern, meaning that one side always does more work than the other. Now we also have a lot of deltoid inclusion, always in the extended arm, meaning that we're starting to include more and more upper body musculature in our pulling movements. And if you want to put even more emphasis on your shoulders and start working on far more control in those, the typewriter pull-up, pulling up to the top and then moving laterally at the top of your range of motion, will do exactly that. A massive amount of shoulder inclusion and a lot of control moving through this joint in a lateral movement pattern. We are including our chest as well with the pushing down motion so we can stay up top, as well as the lateral pulling motion. And then the pull-up that puts everything together and works every single muscle fiber in your upper body while requiring a lot of tension and control through your entire body, being circular pull-ups, basically combining the archer pull-up, a lateral pull-up, a lateral move at the very top, and a lateral reversal of the movement, which is basically everything we did with all of the other variations just before that. Moving us to an exercise that is pretty much the pinnacle of athleticism. Not only can it help you build a lot of strength, a lot of control, and a lot of endurance, but also pack on some real size onto your legs. And that is the standing box jump, meaning we are starting from a standing position instead of a running position, using both of our feet simultaneously for a full jump. You can even extend your legs at the very top to add a little bit more quad engagement as well before you step that down carefully, just so you don't hurt yourself, and move into the next repetition. But also do the same for single-sided standing box jumps, because that is going to increase the difficulty even more, help you put on a lot more strength, a lot more size, and requires a lot more control, because we also now have a lot of stabilization going on in our core, as well as our foot and ankle musculature to keep us from falling over and to help us go through a safe single-sided jump. And then this is how you really start having fun with this exercise, which of course is increasing the range of motion of your jump until you can barely go through the entire thing, and then increase it a tiny bit more, because once you think that this is the end, probably there is still a tiny bit more left. And then you keep repeating this until you're fully out of energy, with the highest jumps building the most amount of strength, the most amount of control, the most amount of size, and helping us with insane amounts of explosivity throughout our entire leg musculature. Once again, helping us bulletproof the exact joints that lead to the most amount of problems. And there you have it, some of the most potent calisthenics exercises that will help you build full body control, full body tension, and full body strength while building a lot more size, some nice hypertrophy gains. And since we have focused a lot on both our lower and our upper body, as well as exercises that combine those, you can basically use those exercises to put together a complete workout routine, and you won't need any other exercises, at least for a very long time, or until you have mastered all of them and have become super bored and have gone through all of the necessary variations that will help you advance them even more. That said, once again, that is all the time I have left for you today. So if you liked the video, like the video, and please come on, subscribe. We do stuff like that almost every single day, which means that I will probably see you tomorrow. So until then, Captain Cairo, peace out.